Rick Tannen lived alone. His cabin sat deep in the snowy lands of planet Glacia 9. Wind screamed across white fields. Snow never stopped falling. The sky stayed gray, always cold. Rick didn't mind. He had chosen this place after the war. He wanted silence. He wanted peace. He wanted to forget. The fire in his small stove crackled softly. Rick sat by it, drinking old army rations, thick soup with no taste. His thick beard covered half his face now. He hadn't spoken to another soul in months until tonight. Scratch, scratch. Rick froze. The sound came from the steel door. No one ever came here. His outpost was marked as abandoned on all maps. The snow was too deep and the storms too strong. Rick slowly stood up. He grabbed the old plasma rifle from the wall. His fingers tightened around the grip. Scratch. Tap, scratch. Not human, he thought. Not heavy enough. He walked to the door. Wind howled outside, pushing against it like angry hands. His breath fogged the air. His boots creaked against the old wooden floor. He opened the small viewing hatch. Nothing. Only swirling snow. Then, movement. Down low. He opened the door 2 inches. A weak voice whispered through the storm. Please, shelter. Rick blinked. A creature stood there, almost buried in snow. Its fur was silver blue, now soaked and matted. 2 smaller figures leaned against it. Children? They were shivering, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Wolf-like bodies, long tails, ears pulled back in fear. The adult collapsed. The 2 small ones whined, pressing close to it. Rick stared. Alien wolves. He had seen their kind during the war. The military used them for patrols and search teams, but they were not machines. They were alive. Some said they were smarter than most people. Rick hesitated. He had promised himself to never get involved again. But the little ones were crying. Damn it, he whispered. He dropped his rifle, opened the door wider and stepped aside. Get in. The 2 pups dragged the larger one inside. They moved slow, cold, and tired. Their paws left wet marks on the wooden floor. Rick shut the door quickly, locking it again. Snow piled outside like a wave. Inside, the room warmed again. The wolves huddled near the fire. The adult, their mother perhaps, breathed slowly, weakly. Her fur was burnt in places. Chains had rubbed her neck raw. Her eyes half opened. She looked at Rick. Thank you, she whispered, then passed out. Rick dropped to one knee. He examined her wounds. Old burns, laser marks, rope cuts. She had escaped something. Or someone. The pups looked at him with wide eyes but didn't growl. One of them touched his boot with a paw. Rick got to work. He pulled his field med kit from the shelf. Wrapped her leg. Placed warm cloths on her chest. He gave the pups small pieces of dried meat. They chewed fast, too hungry to think. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Rick sat beside the fire. His rifle lay beside him. His mind raced. Why were they out there? Who hurt them? Why come here? The answer came with another sound. Crunch. 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 Footsteps in the snow. Not soft like theirs. Heavy. Purposeful. Rick stood. He turned off the lights. The fire still burned, but dim now. The pups pressed close to their mother. One whimpered. He moved to the door again. He peeked through the hatch. Nothing. But he saw them. Tracks in the snow. Not one set. Multiple. And then, eyes. 4 red glowing dots in the distance. Machines. Drones? Hunters? Rick's heart pounded. They had been followed. He stepped back. Checked his weapon. Loaded the energy cell. The cold wasn't the enemy tonight. Something worse was coming. Behind him, the injured wolf mother opened one eye. Her voice was barely a whisper. They want my children? Rick looked at her, then at the pups, then at the door. He wasn't alone anymore, and they weren't going to die tonight. The storm outside had grown wilder, throwing ice and snow against Rick's cabin like angry fists. The wind screamed through the gaps in the old wood walls, but inside, the fire still burned low and the alien wolves lay near it, trembling but alive. Rick didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, staring at the door. His rifle rested in his lap. His muscles were tight. Every few seconds he looked at the small viewing hatch in the steel door. He had seen something out there, red eyes and tracks in the snow. Machines maybe, drones, but not normal ones. These moved smartly. They were scanning, hunting. The bigger wolf, Sarah, as he now knew her name, opened her eyes again. She tried to speak but coughed instead. Rick poured water from his kettle and helped her drink. Her hands were shaky. Her voice was dry. They tracked us. We ran, but they always follow. Rick kept his voice low. What are they? She whispered, hunters. From the pits. We escaped. Her words hit him hard. Rick remembered the war. Many alien species were forced to fight, trained like animals. The ice wolves had been used too. They were smart, loyal, and brave. But after the war ended, they were abandoned, treated like failed weapons. He looked at the pups. They were curled up together, sleeping now, small and thin. He asked, "Are they yours?" Sarah nodded. "My children. They were born free. I want them to stay free." Rick stood and walked to the small window. He saw the footprints again, big, heavy. Perfect circles. Too perfect. Not made by a living thing, made by machines, scouting drones or synthetic trackers. He knew the signs. He had seen them used to capture escaped test subjects before. They didn't stop. They didn't feel. They just hunted until the target was down or gone. Rick checked his tools. His cabin had old security tech. Most was broken now, but a few things still worked. He powered up the motion sensor, an old device that beeped if anything came within 30 meters. Beep, it blinked, red. Something was moving. Close. Rick rushed to the fire and grabbed a thick metal sheet from behind the wall. He pushed it over the door's inner locks and bolted it tight. Then he looked at Sarah. "You need to stay low. Hide the kids." Sarah nodded and crawled to the back corner behind the woodpile. She covered the pups with an old blanket Rick handed her. He moved to the back wall and flipped open a secret panel. Inside was a short-range jammer. He hadn't used it in years. It was dusty, but when he switched it on, a soft hum filled the room. No signal could go in or out now. He knew the drones would detect the jamming soon. But for now, it bought time. Then something knocked, not scratched, knocked. 3 slow bangs on the steel door. Rick froze. The knock was calm. Too calm, then came a voice, mechanical but with a strange calmness. "Open the door. Return the fugitives. You will not be harmed." Rick stepped back. "Not gonna happen. This is your only warning." The voice vanished. Rick looked at the door and thought hard. He had 2 small thermal charges left. He had wires, old traps from his army days, and a few flares. He started setting them up, one near the window, one by the front steps, a wire that would spark if touched. He moved fast, quietly. Sarah watched him. "Like, are you helping us?" Rick didn't stop working. "Because I've seen this before. And I didn't stop it back then. This time, I will." Outside, a sound echoed across the snow. Click. Whir. Click. The drones were scanning. Rick finished his traps and aimed his rifle toward the door. Then he waited. Suddenly, bang! The first trap exploded. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the outside air. Rick ran to the hatch. Through it, he saw one drone fall, spinning and burning. But behind it, 3 more, and one wasn't a drone, it was a human covered in armor. Red visor. Moving slowly toward the cabin, Rick's heart dropped. He knew that walk. He knew that style. That was a bounty hunter, and not just any bounty hunter. Rick whispered, "Craig," his old squad mate, the man who once called alien allies walking trash. Now he was here, for the wolves. And Rick knew this fight was just beginning. Snow kept falling, soft but endless. The storm had quieted a little, yet the air outside was full of danger. Rick sat near the window, his rifle in his lap, his breath slow and steady. The firelight danced on the metal walls of his cabin. The alien wolves were silent now. The pups hid behind their mother, their eyes full of fear. Sarah, the injured mother, lay close to the fire. Her breathing had improved, but she still looked weak. Her fur shimmered faintly blue, reflecting the firelight. Rick's mind was full of questions. He knew that voice outside. He couldn't forget that tone, cold, calm, confident. It was Craig, once his brother in arms. They had fought together during the Orion campaign. They had saved lives together. But after the war, Craig had changed. He had become a hunter, selling his skills for credits. Rick whispered, What are they offering for you? Sarah's eyes opened halfway. A price, she said quietly, a bounty. For our heads. We are not supposed to exist. Rick frowned. Why? She turned her gaze toward the floor. Because we are war creations. My kind were made from spliced DNA, half beast, half soldier. They called us bioassets. When the war ended, they destroyed most of us. The few who escaped were hunted. Rick's fists tightened. Humans did this? She nodded slowly. Humans and others, but not you. He didn't know what to say. The memories of his military days haunted him. He remembered those labs where experiments were made in the name of victory. He remembered hearing screams echo through steel corridors while scientists took notes. He had walked away then, pretending he didn't hear, and now those same creations stood before him begging for help. Rick stood and walked to the control panel on the wall. He pulled out a small disk, an old data key marked with a faded military symbol. He plugged it into the terminal. A dull green screen flickered to life. The database still worked. He typed in a few codes he still remembered. Lines of data appeared. Then he saw it. Operation Icebreed Bioweapon Recovery Protocol. A list of names scrolled down. Sarah's name was there. Her pup's too. And next to each name, a bounty value. Rick leaned back in his chair. They're calling this a cleanup mission, he muttered. Sarah said nothing, but her claws dug into the floor. They won't stop, Rick said. Not until every one of you is dead. The room went silent. After a moment, Sarah looked up at him. You helped us. You don't have to do more. Rick's jaw tightened. You're wrong, he said. I do. He picked up his rifle and loaded another power cell. Outside, snow crunched. Rick looked through the viewing hatch again. Craig stood near the edge of the trees, his red visor glowing through the mist. 3 drones hovered around him like silent shadows. Then Craig's voice came through a loudspeaker. Rick, you still alive in there? Rick didn't answer. Craig continued. I know you've got the fugitives. Don't make me come in. I'm not here for you, just them. Step aside and I'll forget you ever helped them. Rick stayed quiet. His finger rested on the trigger. You always had a soft heart, Craig said. It's what got your squad killed back on Dracon Ridge. Don't make the same mistake again. Rick closed his eyes. The words cut deep. He remembered that day. His team had been surrounded. He chose to save civilians instead of retreating. Command called it betrayal. They stripped his rank and sent him home in shame. Craig had been there too, watching, obeying orders. Rick opened his eyes and spoke. You left me for dead, Craig. Static crackled in the air, then Craig laughed through the speaker. And yet here you are, still playing hero. Rick's finger twitched on the trigger, but he didn't fire. He turned to Sarah. We can't stay. They'll call more reinforcements soon. Sarah looked up weakly. There is an old mine tunnel nearby, 2 miles east. It leads to the cliffs, Rick nodded. We'll go there before dawn. He gathered supplies, thermal blankets, rations, and spare ammo. The wolves prepared to move, though the pups were frightened. Sarah limped but refused to rest. Rick helped her stand. You'll need your strength. We move at first light. Then the motion sensor beeped again. Rick looked at it. Multiple signals. Too many. Craig wasn't waiting anymore. Rick took one last look around his cabin, the only home he had left. The one place where he thought peace might live. Now it would become a battlefield again. He whispered, You wanted a fight, Craig? Fine. He turned to Sarah and her pups. Stay behind me. And no matter what happens, don't look back. He opened the door to the frozen storm. Snow rushed in, cold and blinding. Outside, red lights moved through the mist, drones circling like predators. Rick stepped into the storm. Rifle ready, his coat flapping in the icy wind. Behind him, Sarah whispered to her children, That human. He fights like the old ones in the legends, and the night swallowed them all. Snow cut their faces like tiny knives. The storm opened and closed like a mouth, hiding and showing the white land again and again. Rick led the way with slow steps. His rifle hung from a sling. In his hands he carried a coil of wire, 2 thermal charges, and a small EMP puck. Sarah limped behind him. The 2 pups pressed close to her legs, trying not to cry. They moved away from the cabin and into the broken rocks east of it. Rick knew the ground. He had mapped it in his head every winter. He also knew a thing the hunters did not know, where the ice shelf was thin, where the wind hit a ditch, where a creature could fall if it stepped wrong. He stopped at a narrow pass between two low ice hills. "Here," he said. "We make a stand." Sarah's breath steamed in the cold. "We cannot win a full fight." "We don't need to," Rick answered. "We slow them. We move again." He worked fast. He tied wire between two frostbit rocks low to the ground. He dusted it with snow so no one could see it. He buried one thermal charge in a loose drift, then hid the second behind an ice tooth that pointed toward the pass. He placed the EMP puck in the center and set the timer to manual. He wanted to choose the moment. The pups watched him with bright eyes. "Listen," Sarah told them softly. "Do as he says." Rick turned to the pups. "You two know how to hide?" The pups nodded. "Show me." The small wolves sank into the snow. Their fur changed shade, turning pale. Their breath slowed. Their bodies became low and still, like lumps of white stone. If Rick had not seen them lie down, he would have missed them. A proud spark warmed his chest. "Good," he said. "Stay near your mother. Move only when I say." The wind fell quiet for a second, then a red dot slid over the snow. Rick looked up. A drone drifted in on silent fans. Another followed. Then a third. Their eyes glowed like coals. Behind them, shapes moved. Tall men in armor, steps heavy, rifles warm and ready. And in the middle, a man with a red visor and a slow, sure walk. Craig. He raised one gloved hand. The group stopped. His voice came cold through a speaker. "Rick, step aside. This is not your fight." Rick stood with open hands. "I won't kill you," he said. "Turn around. Tell your buyer the wolves died in the storm." Craig's visor tilted. "You always had hope." "It is a weakness." "Hope is not my weakness," Rick said. "It is my reason." Craig nodded to a drone. The drone floated forward, scanning lines sweeping the ground. It reached the wire. It did not see it. Snap. The drone jerked down as the wire cut a fan blade. It spun and hit the drift where Rick had buried a charge. Whomp. A soft, deep blast. Snow leapt into the air like a white wave. The shock knocked two more drones from the sky. The men stumbled. Their visors flashed warnings. Rick pressed the EMP. The air cracked. Devices screamed. The flying lights went dark. 3 drones crashed into the ice like dead birds. Armor suits blinked. Guns lost their lock. "Move!" Rick shouted. Sarah and the pups flowed like snow. They slipped along the shadow of the ice tooth. Rick fired 2 shots, not to kill but to cut a rope of frozen cornice above the pass. It fell like a curtain. Ice shards danced across the hunter's boots. Craig lifted a hand. "Advance. Non-lethal nets. I want the mother alive." Rick fired again, this time at the ground in front of them. The ice there was thin. It cracked with a tearing sound. 2 hunters fell through. Cold water drank them to the waist. They screamed. Rick dove forward, grabbed a rope from his pack and slid it across the ice. "Take it," he shouted. The men stared, shocked. Craig's visor turned. "He is helping you," he said, flat. "He is still the same." One hunter grabbed the rope. Rick pulled with a grunt. The man crawled out, shaking. He looked at Rick, confused, ashamed. "Go," Rick said. "Run! Leave this job!" The man staggered back, breathing hard. Craig raised his rifle. "Enough!" A shot rang. The round hit the ice an inch from Rick's boot. Rick rolled behind a ridge. Sarah growled low. The pups pressed close. "We go now," Rick said. "Tunnel is near." They slipped along a wind-carved gully that led east. Behind them, Craig's team pushed through the broken pass. More drones rebooted. More red eyes woke. Rick set his last charge at the mouth of the gully and armed it for pressure. If a heavy boot stepped on it, the snow would rise again and bury the path for a while. They reached a flat field where the wind had polished the ice like glass. Beyond it lay dark rock and a black line in the ground, the mine entrance, half buried, half forgotten. "We're close," Rick said. He turned. Sarah was not there. Only the pup stood by his leg, shaking. Rick's heart kicked. "Sarah?" Her scent still hung in the air, sharp and cold. Tracks showed her steps turning away from the gully. She had split off when he looked back at the men in the ice. Why, to draw fire? To protect the pups? A new sound rolled over the storm, a ship. Low, heavy. Not Craig's light carrier. This one was bigger, meaner. The cloud layer glowed dull orange as it cut through the sky. Rick tasted smoke in the wind. "Firebombs," he whispered. The big ship punched out of the mist and circled above the cabin area behind them. A hatch opened. Canisters dropped, small at first, then many. They hit and burst with angry light. Flame crawled over the snow and did not die. Rick grabbed the pups and pulled them into the mine shadow. "Hold on," he said. "Do not move. Do not make a sound." In the distance, through sheets of orange fire and gray snow, he saw a shape on a ridge. A single wolf form, tall and proud, turning her head toward the hunters, away from the tunnel. Sarah. She stood alone on the ice, like a beacon. She howled once, clear and brave. The ship turned its nose toward her. Rick lifted his rifle, breath burning in his chest. The trigger felt heavy, and then the sky opened with fire. Fire fell from the sky like red rain. Rick dragged the two pups into the shadow of the mine mouth. Heat washed across the ice field. The big ship circled like a dark hawk, dropping more burning canisters on the snow. The flames did not die. They crawled and hissed and ate the white ground. "Stay low," Rick told the pups. "Breathe slow. Do not run." He looked for Sarah. Far out on the ridge, she stood in the open, head high, body steady, calling the ship toward her. She wanted to pull danger away from her children. It worked. The ship turned. Its nose dipped. A bright line burned under its hull. "Sarah, move," Rick shouted. Though the wind would swallow his voice, he raised his rifle. He aimed at the ship's left engine. He fired once, twice. The shots hit. Sparks jumped. The ship shook, then steadied. It was armored better than he hoped. Boots pounded behind him. Rick turned fast. Cold light poured down the gully where he had set his traps. Craig's men pushed through the ice dust. 2 drones flew wide, nets ready. Craig walked in the middle like a man at a casual march. His red visor burned through the smoke. "Enough running, Rick," Craig called. His voice was calm, like a teacher in a quiet room. Give me the mother and the pups. You can walk away." Rick stepped out from the mine shadow. "No," Craig stopped 10 paces from him. He lifted one hand. The soldiers aimed but did not fire. Craig's tone changed, almost gentle. "I know you. You save broken things. You collect them. You think it gives your life meaning. You were always like this. It killed our squad. Don't let it kill you too." Rick kept his rifle low. "Our squad died because I followed the right order," he said. "The order inside. The one that said, protect the weak." Craig tilted his head. "There is no such order in real war." "There is now," Rick said. A drone darted to the side and spat a net toward the mine mouth. One pup yelled. Rick moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of the net. Lines wrapped his arm and chest. Barbs bit through his coat. He crashed to the ice, breath gone. The second drone swooped to take the trapped bundle. Rick rolled and shot it through the lens. It dropped like a stone. He tore at the net with a knife, hissing as barbs tore skin. "Hold," Craig said to his men. He looked down at Rick. "You are bleeding. You cannot carry them far. Hand them over, and I swear your death will be fast." Rick stood, chest heaving. Blood darkened his sleeve. He stepped back so his body blocked the pups. "I am not here to die," he said. "I am here to make a line in the ice." Craig lifted 2 fingers. Rifles clicked. Then a sound cut the air. Clear, cold, and deep a howl. Not one voice. Many. It rolled across the field like thunder behind mountains. Shapes rose from the snow beyond the mine. At first they looked like low white rocks. Then ears lifted. Tails flicked. Eyes opened like tiny blue flames. One by one, wolves pulled free from their hiding places in the drifts and shadows. 10, 15, 20. They stood in a wide half circle around Rick. Their fur caught the firelight and turned it to pale ice. They were bigger than Sarah, with lean bodies and strong shoulders. Scars marked some. Frost clung to others like silver dust. Sarah walked out from the smoke to join them. Her limp was light now. She took her place in the center, head high. The 2 pups ran to her legs, shaking with relief. Craig did not move. "So," he said softly. "A clan." Sarah's eyes did not leave him. "We were made to fight," she said in a low voice that carried. "But we were born to live." The wolves spread out, making space between each other like trained soldiers. Rick felt pressure in his head, like a soft hand on his mind. A whisper moved through the air, but no mouths were speaking. He realized what it was. A link. The wolves were talking without sounds. Rick heard only the edge of it. Short feelings, fast plans, small bright sparks of left, right, wait, now. It made his hair rise. It was not cold. It was not scary. It was beautiful. Craig flicked his hand. Stun rounds. Drop them. The first line of soldiers raised rifles. Sarah did not bark. She only looked at Rick. He nodded once. The wolves moved. They did not run straight. They flowed. They broke and joined and broke again like water around stones. Nets flew and tangled empty air. Stun bursts hit snow. White vapor rose. A wolf slid under a rifle and bumped the man's knee. Another jumped high and slapped a drone from the sky with one clean strike. Rick fired at legs, never at hearts. He shot the ground to throw up shards. He shot a weapon from a hand. He moved with the wolves as if a small part of their link had reached him too. He did not know how. He did not stop to ask. Form up, Craig barked. He turned fast and smooth and fired at Sarah. Rick saw the flash. He threw himself across her path. The round hit his shoulder plate and spun him. Pain burned. He hit the ice and slid. Sarah stood over him, teeth bare. She did not leap. She waited. Craig stared at Rick. You would take a round for an animal? She is a mother, Rick said, breath rough. And she saved me first. Flame roared behind them as the big ship banked low. Its pilot chose a hard, cruel line straight at the wolves. Canisters dropped again, a rain of orange. Sarah's pupils narrowed. She lifted her head. Howl. It was not a loud call this time. It was sharp. It was a code. Every wolf turned sideways at once as if one mind moved their legs. The fire fell between their lines and burned a black path not a single pelt touched. Craig flinched. For the first time his visor tilted like a man who had just seen a ghost. What was that? He whispered. Rick pushed himself up. Blood ran down his arm. That, he said, was training you never learned. The wolves howled again, softer now. The sound echoed under the ice, deep and strange, like it woke something old in the ground. A tremor shivered through the field. Snow cracked, not in one place, but many. In the distance beyond the mine, blue lights flickered under the ice, small at first, then brighter, then bright as stars. Lines formed like veins in a leaf. Sarah looked at Rick. We called, she said. Called who? He asked. She faced the glowing field. Our elders, she whispered. And whoever still remembers the debt they never paid. The tremor grew. Craig lifted his hand, unsure at last. From the far ridge, a deep voice answered the howls, old, powerful, and close as thunder. The ice sang back. The ice field turned white like a second sun. Rick covered his eyes with his arm. Heat touched his face, then cold rushed back like a wave. The sound of the ship's cannon died, and the world went quiet except for the soft crack of cooling ice. When the light faded, Rick looked up. The ship hung in the air, shaking. Its nose cannon was bent like soft metal. The engines coughed and spat steam. Blue lines under the ice dimmed, then rested like a heartbeat slowing. The elder wolf still stood in front of Rick. The round had not hit him. The ground song had caught the shot and pushed it aside. A tiny curl of smoke rose from the ice near his paw. Rick breathed out. Thank you, he whispered. Craig stared at the field, then at his own hand. The depth charge still sat in his palm, armed. The pup's small paw rested on his wrist, warm and shaking. Craig looked at the pup, then at Rick, then at Sarah. Something in him moved. He pressed the safety tab and powered the bomb down. The elder turned his head. The blue veins under the ice faded to pale threads. The wolves stood easy now, not tense, as if the ground itself had told them, "It is enough." Craig took a step back. His voice lost its hard edge. What did I just see? Rick kept his rifle low. You saw them choose life, he said. You can choose it too. Above, the damaged ship tried to climb, failed, and sank toward the snow. It landed hard on one strut and tilted. Its hatch opened, and two crew in gray armor stumbled out, waving smoke away. They aimed their rifles, then looked around at the circle of wolves and lowered them, confused and scared. Craig lifted his hand to signal an attack, but he did not finish the motion. The elder looked at him, calm and steady. Sarah stood beside the elder, her children pressed to her legs. She spoke in a clear voice. We are done fighting, she said. But we will not be taken. Rick stepped forward, blood drying on his sleeve. He took a small old device from his pocket, his emergency beacon, last useful favor from a forgotten war. He had not used it in years. He raised the antenna and switched it on. A green light blinked. The code went up into the cold sky. Craig turned his visor. You called patrol? Rick nodded. They settle frontier disputes, he said. They can read the bounty files and end this the right way. Craig's jaw tensed. They will arrest me. Rick looked at him for a long second. Or you can stand with us now and tell the truth. Silence. Wind touched their faces and moved on. In the distance, a faint hum grew. A small patrol cutter slipped through the clouds, clean and white, lights steady. It circled once, scanned the field, then landed between the broken ship and the mine mouth. Two officers in blue stepped out, visors up, hands open. The lead officer spoke gently. We received an old credential beacon from a Sergeant Richard Tannen, she said. Is that you? Rick nodded. Yes. She looked at the wolves, then at the damaged hunters, then at the smoldering canisters swallowed by the ice. Her eyes narrowed. What happened here? Rick did not make a speech. He told it simple, step by step. The storm. The knocking, the pups, Sarah's wounds, the drones, the bounty, Craig's arrival, the ship's bombs, the elders and the ground song. He did not hide his own actions. He did not make himself a hero. He only told the truth. Sarah spoke too, voice low but firm. We were made for war, she said, but we were born to live. We ask only this, leave our young free. The officer listened, tapping notes into a thin slate. She asked for the bounty file. Rick gave her the old data key. She plugged it into her wrist unit. A red warning flashed. She frowned. This bounty is illegal, she said at last. Terminated by treaty 2 years ago. Someone revived it for profit. She turned to the ship crew and to Craig's men. You are operating under a void order. The two ship crew looked down, ashamed. Some of Craig's soldiers dropped their rifles. One took off his helmet and sat on the ice, shaking his head like a man waking from a bad dream. The officer faced Craig. And you? Craig's voice was flat. I chose the job. Do you choose it still? She asked. Craig looked at the pup beside him. The small paw had left a faint wet print on his glove. He closed his eyes, then opened them again. When he spoke, his voice was different, quiet, almost tired. No, he said. I am done. He dropped the depth charge into the snow and kicked it away. The officer nodded. She sent 2 medics to help the injured and a tech to disarm the crashed ship. Then she turned to Rick. You knew you could die today, she said. Rick tried to smile. I thought I already had, he said, inside. The officer's mouth curved a little. There is one more thing, she added. The pups and their clan need legal cover if they are to stay near this outpost. Under frontier law, a human may register a protection bond, temporary guardianship for non-human dependents who seek refuge. Sarah looked at Rick, eyes bright. The pups looked too, tails still, breath held. Rick swallowed. What does it mean? It means, the officer said, you sign your name and the law stands in front of your door with you. Rick looked at the elder. The elder dipped his head once, slow and proud. Rick faced the officer. Do it, he said. I'll sign. She held out the slate. He wrote his name with a rough finger, line by line. The small green light glowed again, steady now like a home fire. The medics wrapped Rick's shoulder. The patrol cutter lifted the wounded and took statements. Craig stood to the side with his men, heads bowed. Before he boarded, he walked to Rick and stopped, not quite meeting his eyes. I was wrong, Craig said. I have been wrong a long time. Rick nodded once. Do better, he said. Craig nodded back and stepped away. Night settled clean and clear. The flames died and only the stars burned. The elders turned and walked to the far ridge. The blue veins under the ice dimmed to a memory. Rick led Sarah and the pups toward the cabin. The door creaked, the stove popped, and warmth reached for them like an old friend. Sarah lay by the fire and closed her eyes, finally safe. The pups climbed onto the rug and looked up at Rick with small, hopeful faces. One of them spoke in a shy, careful voice. Dad, fire's warm again. Rick's throat tightened. He sat on the floor beside them, back against the wall, rifle finally set aside. He felt the old weight in his chest lift, like a stone rolled off his heart and fell into the snow. Outside, the wind moved across the ice and sang a small, sweet song. Inside, Rick listened and smiled. The wolves had asked for shelter and he had opened his door. What happened next had stunned him, yes, but more than that, it had given him a family, and this time he would not walk away.